Hey guys, I'm Tiffany Bradley. This is Art Off Pause, and I am here with Alexander Hernandez, who is hanging out with us in Los Angeles. If you're new, what? No?
San Francisco.
Oh, I am so sorry. Who's hanging out in San Francisco? I totally got lots of things wrong. If you're new, I don't know what city anyone's in, but we have chat on the side of this panel, and then we also have Q&A underneath. If you're on YouTube, hey YouTube, you can't ask questions if you're on YouTube, but we still love you. So today we'll be talking with Alexander, who's a sculptor and social worker. So I'll read a bio, I'll talk a little bit about the critical framework we're thinking with, and then Alexander will let us know about his work and what's changed right now. So Alexander Hernandez is a first-generation Mexican-American artist. He received his BFA in painting and drawing from Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design in Denver, Colorado, and his MFA at California College of the Arts in San Francisco in studio art. His current work ranges in mixed media with an emphasis in textiles. His work has been exhibited in LA, Brooklyn, Chicago, Denver, Baltimore, and internationally in Australia, Canada, and Latvia. And I will also say that he is a social worker and has some great thoughts about the world as it is right now based on that. So when I started talking to Alexander and thinking about his work and thinking about migration and textiles, one thing came to mind very clearly. And that is the quilt codes that enslaved Africans theoretically maybe used in their path along the Underground Railroad, which I don't know if we always talk about as a migration, but really as a migration from unfreedom to freedom. And definitely an act of super self-determination. And so I had read a book called Hidden in Plain View, A Secret Story of Quilts and the Underground Railroad many years ago. I don't have it in my house. All the libraries are closed. So I went on the internet and I quickly fell down a historiographical dust up about people who said the book is a lie. That's not true. We have no documentation that anything like that ever happened. And I'll say the book Hidden in Plain View was co-written by Raymond G. Dobard, who was an art history professor at Howard, based on his family's experience. So he didn't just pull it out of thin air. There was something there. But it's really interesting to think about migratory people and people who have been written out of history and how then they're called on to explain or defend their experience. A lot of folks who say that there's no such thing as this quilting code basically are like, we know everything there is to know about Southern quilts and we've never heard this. Therefore, it may not be true. When they are the exact people who wouldn't or shouldn't have known about such things. So I think sort of thinking about ducking and covering and hiding as you move to safety is a really interesting place to start thinking about your work, Alex. And I'm going to make you big. So get ready and you can tell us about what you had planned before the shelter-in-place order came on and how you're working now.
Right. Well, so a lot of my work deals with intersectionality and how a lot of immigrants or people of color kind of have to code switch and, or have to morph their identities to suit where they're at the moment, or for example, growing up, I was either too brown or not brown enough, depending on who you asked. And it always kind of felt like I had to choose. And then I kind of had to create my own identity. And it's interesting because my family moved to Colorado, and it's when I was exposed to quilts and I was really interested in like patchwork, but it wasn't. But also by film, because when I would see how patchwork was used like as a something to put together, I was really interested in not only the visual aspect, like where things that didn't match went together, suddenly created something, and then there's also kind of a Frankensteinian element because I mix patterns that are like Mexican and Americana, and then also like influenced by pop culture, and so it I'm always like kind of recreating my identity and then kind of putting things together. And so in the last couple of years, I've been sort of putting my HIV identity or being positive is- together with the stuff that I was working on. So I actually did a proposal for the San Francisco Arts Commission to do a series of portraits of um, people that are living with HIV. Um, and the reason I wanted to do this is because there's so many there's so many like movies and like histories about like death and like you know being a victim, being positive, and I wanted to like kind of change the story because there's a lot of survivors, a lot of people living with HIV, and how, and I also was interested how different people had to navigate that identity in their community. So like how being positive in Latin communities, you know, what how being and also having friends that are black and having to deal with that, and how we all kind of deal with it differently. And then there's communities that we're in that we kind of can talk about it freely, and then there's certain people in the families that we can't talk about it because then they wouldn't understand. And there's also a lot of lack of education. So I wanted to kind of create these portraits that like showed people as show their resilience and their strength. Um, and so I started to do these portraits using patterns from their cultural identity, but also you know like using pop cultural like for example, I also use like children bed sheets, from certain things that people grew up with. They kind of help shape their identity. And then so I got the grant and I did these portraits for, and they were supposed to be shown at the end of the month at Acción Latina here in San Francisco in the Mission District. Um, but then, everything happened a few months ago, and so it's kind of been on pause indefinitely. So I don't know what am I gonna do with these portraits. But then I also started like kind of, but it was kind of I was kind of lucky enough though because there was something missing in the portraits that I felt like I didn't know what was missing with them, and it wasn't until this happened that I suddenly like thought, oh wait, like I want to kind of change these pieces, and it's something that I've done before, and it's something that I think it's kind of, and it's also kind of adds now that I'm speaking about it, it kind of adds to the history of quilts because, or not just quilts, but also like boros in Japan, where you can add things when things are unraveling. You can add another patch and you add another layer. So I decided to add things to these portraits that I made. And actually, you can kind of see the preview. You can kind of see how I changed them. So it's like a square. So that square is what I started off with.
Yep.
Um, and then I and then I decided I needed to change them during this time to kind of reflect what was going on. And I turned each person into like a chimera type creature. So like a mixture and a hybrid of different things to kind of show how resilient the positive community can be and how easily adaptable they have to be because they already have to take care of we already have to take care of our health um, all the time. So this is just like another great like another thing that we have to deal with. And so I wanted to turn them into kind of add these like mythical creature elements to them to kind of show the adaptation that positive people have been dealing with ever since the Reagan administration, and how we have to kind of take care of ourselves as a community, and so have to take care of each other. And so I wanted to add those elements to it by creating them into almost like an evolution. And and I'm also gonna mix another bit of pop culture, like kind of like how Pokemon have to like evolve to the next level, to another level. um, and so I have some of these portraits or my friends, some former lovers, and then also some people that I look up to. Like I did one of the portraits I did is of Mondo Guerra. I don't know if you know who that is.
Yeah, from Project Runway.
Yes. Well, I mean, when he came out with being positive, it was such a big deal for me because I was still trying to figure it out, how to like, and I'm still having issues with having to come out, because not only do I have to come out with it being gay, I also have to come out with it being positive. So he was kind of a big thing for me when he came out, and so I wanted to do a portrait of him, and that's kind of where it started, and then I wanted to involve my other friends and lovers and etc.
Do you quilt using a needle and thread, or do you use a machine?
Oh no, I use a sewing machine. It would take forever if I. But I do add some hand stitching elements to it too, and also there's a digital aspect. So I print some of the fabrics too, because and I just started doing that like a year ago because I wanted. There were certain pattern, like for example, you can see this other one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is a portrait of my friend Cal. I wanted to get that cloud pattern that's actually from like I think it's from Mario. But
Yeah,
there's
it looks like a Nintendo.
yeah. I wanted. There's so many patterns that I've noticed in cartoons and video games that I'm like, oh wait, these actually can translate to textiles.
So
So
you're quilter, but also textile designer in this case. Yes.
right. So I've been teaching myself how to do Illustrator and Photoshop, and then I also mix other fabrics and like old shirts. So like you can see this shirt right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm always collecting fabric and patterns and things like that.
Great. So, audience, I will say, let me look at the chat. You can chat questions here. We're at about 12 minutes, which is maybe halfway through. So if you have questions for Alex, please ask. Otherwise, I will keep asking questions. Which my next question will be, you're balancing your art practice along with being a social worker. And sort of both of those are full-time draining jobs. So yeah, neither one are easy. And social worker, I don't hear that said very often when we talk about essential workers. I feel like social workers and home health care aides are people who are very intrinsic to our medical system, but we're not always hearing those talked about. So how are you sort of like balancing your life in this crazy, crazy moment?
Well, it's kind of I've been doing it for 6 years now, and I started I started by working with young people that are HIV positive, and it's actually one of the reasons that my work kind of started to change and one of the reasons that I actually wanted to do a project like this, because a lot of the young people that become positive are very like they've been seeing movies, from the '90s, and like they always think they're gonna die. And I wanted to work with young people and be like, you're healthy. Medication around this time is like actually pretty good. You can live a full life, and so that's why I wanted to do a project like this, where I wanted to show survivors and people that are living with HIV that are healthier than most, average people actually. And so I started doing that, and I worked in the Tenderloin, which is like it's like Skid Row of San Francisco, pretty much. Um, and so it's great, but it also kind of changes you because there's a lot of there's already a lot of vicarious trauma that comes with it. Like you have to deal with other people's baggage, you want to help, but you also kind of have to be careful because um, you have to like let the young people kind of make their choices, because a lot of times, for example, we get a lot of like, there's been social workers that are like, that come from like middle or upper class families that just want to help and do these things, but and it just, I mean, it's just a coincidence that they happen to be white, and sometimes they don't know how to deal with other communities, and sometimes they want to play savior that savior kind of card. So I kind of have to like not only deal with my clients, but also kind of have to deal with some of the people coming in. Like, you can't just give people free shit, because then they're not going to be able to get things that they want. If you want to play the savior, you have to like kind of teach people to get these things on their own, because once they leave this program, they're not going to know how you get them. And so and then I got moved into a LGBT program to help youth, and it's been actually, I've been kind of trying to leave, but I feel like I kind of, fall into this golden cage where I get benefits, and and so I haven't been able to leave because I also have my health to take care of, and I have insurance, and I have all these things that kind of keep me, and they're also very flexible with my schedules, and like, I can be gone for a month and I haven't, and they'll be okay with it. And then this came, and then I was like, shoot, I can't leave. I still can't leave. I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and
People,
yeah, so, and so, I mean, I've helped with, I've made masks for my clients, and I've made masks for my coworker. So that's kind of something that I've been helping with. And then just trying to, and then, but also some of my youth have been unraveling, and like kind of, their drug use has gone up because they're stressed out. And a lot of times when you, like, people that are at risk, I mean, one of the reasons that people become drug addicts is because they kind of have, they either don't have a support, their family either disown them, or, and then, or also they, and then sometimes they feel like they have no purpose in life, and then people usually, that's when they usually fall into drugs. And so I've been dealing with some clients that have kind of been falling into that lately, because you know they can't go to, to drag shows and do this, so they kind of been, doing risky behavior. And then it kind of gets, and there's always a lot of, like I said earlier, like vicarious trauma, because you you see them unraveling, and you can't always do anything,
yeah.
and sometimes you just have to watch. So I'm just kind of hoping that hopefully this kind of COVIDness issue kind of opens people's eyes to kind of realize how broken a lot of these systems are, because like a lot of nonprofits are kind of a mess, like, unfortunately. And so a lot of things, like, that's why some of the drug use has gone up, or there's just always kind of, and I hopefully people kind of notice, not just these, like, this nonprofit, but also the medical world is also kind of, we realize that it's not, insurance and all these things are probably not working right now either. I mean, right now, like, in a few months, I'm actually wondering, like, the people that, I mean, there's people who died, obviously, and then there's going to be people who are going to have these big ass bills. you know there's going to be people that are going to survive this,
Yeah.
and then have to owe like $50,000. Like, people don't realize that in the long run. Like, yeah, and then there's going to be probably a lot of, you know online campaigns to get money, and it's just like, why are we doing this when, like, Europe has like way better, you know system of taking care of their folks. Like, they don't have to do GoFund pages,
Yeah.
just for being a survivor. And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, and so it's kind of like there's so many right now. We're just kind of been right now. We haven't even seen like like everything that's going to happen. Yeah, we're still gonna. It's gonna be like years till people kind of see the end of this.
Yeah.
And there's like rich people can fix things quickly, but like I forgot what his name said. Like I can't think of the author, but he something about how it's very expensive to be poor.
It's true. So we have a question from the audience,
Yeah.
but I will here. We're back side by side. Um, I will just reiterate a couple of things that you said. So when you talked about your portraits of different community members and how a lot of the kids you work with only see terrible movies about people dying, there was a hashtag on social media. I mean, I guess people probably still use it, called Bury Your Gays, about all of the sort of like trauma in pop fiction. Every movie or TV show that the queer character always met some grisly, crazy end. And so it's really thoughtful to be working in representation against that. But also just the piece about collective trauma, that you're a social worker and you're seeing in your community how your kids are struggling. But even in the New York Times, they're doing articles about how it's wine o'clock for middle class people all the time now, and people's drinking seems to be getting out of hand. As a country, I think there's a lot of trauma that we're going to have to deal with, along with the medical bills. So sort of as a group, we need to start thinking about how we're addressing that or not. So we have a question, which is about your process. What was the process like learning to sew? Did you have a mentor, work off tutorials, or learn anything unexpected as you were getting your craft going?
So actually, I've always wanted to learn how to sew, and I remember asking my mom, you know, maybe I kind of implied about getting lessons, and then she just kind of brushed it off, saying that it was for women. And so I never got into it when I was young, and it was in undergrad when I took a fiber class, and I started to mix it into my painting. Because I actually have a bachelor's in painting and drawing, and I was a painter first, but then in undergrad, in 2007, I started to mix fabrics and, embroidery into my work. And then I just kind of fell into it. I started working for a sewing machine company, and then I kind of became a sewing like fanatic, and I just kind of I haven't left since. And this was also around 2007, so that's when I graduated. So 2006, 2007. This was also, remember, this is around the time that the economy like kind of bursted, and a lot of people were doing DIY stuff.
Mm,
And
yep.
so I also got into it because there was a resurgence of craft, and people were wanting to do their own clothes or wanting to patch up their own stuff. And so that's one of the reasons that I got into it. And so it was people like people's work that I look up to was like Louise Bourgeois was one. Also Rauschenberg, because he mixed a lot of like quilts. I mean, he would paint on top of them, but he still like, and also the way he layered things
Mm-hmm.
was very like quilt like. And then there's also work like Gada Amir that I got really into.
Yes, so she sort of does like pornographic
Right,
needlepoint. That's the best way to put it.
right. No.
Yes.
And actually started doing like gay erotic embroideries around this time, because it was like, wow, I can actually people and a lot of people were trying to do things with craft that hadn't been done at this time, and so I kind of got into that as well. And then I decided to move to San Francisco in 2010, because I lost my job and a lot of us wanted to go back to grad school, and so I've been here since 2010 ever since, and still. And then and then there's also an influence of drag in my work because I there's a lot of drag queens in San Francisco, and I moved in to a house that had a lot of drag queens. So I was also informed by the fabric that they would use. So I'll use like sequins and like, and in some of my work you'll see a lot of remnants from some of the outfits that my friends would make. So it's been kind of a like a hodgepodge of all these different things that kind of also, I mean, and it also kind of adds to like that quilt like aesthetic that I am into anyways.
Yeah, and it's funny, we don't, I guess we don't talk enough about the drag community as a maker community, but it's definitely like a DIY, you
Right.
know, make sort of like make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, like, you know, whatever you can find and repurpose for glam. That's definitely its own aesthetic and its own tradition. So we have a question from Gonzalo about how you're connecting. Are you connecting with other artists during this difficult time? What collaborations have you done, and what would you like to accomplish?
Well, at the moment, I'm not. I actually, one of the things is I kind of I lost my studio during this time too. So I kind of lost my connection to other artists, unfortunately, because of that. And rent in SF is very expensive. But collaborations. I mean, I've done collaborations with the drag queens I was talking about. But actually, for my my thesis in 2012, I kind of did a. My thesis was on like queer craft, and I went to Juchitán in Mexico, where I kind of I worked with this well, like a two spirited. Uh, they're called mushas, and I guess that was kind of a collaboration, and that also added another layer to my work because there's a group of people who are like traditionally embroidering and weaving in Mexico that are technically trans or like non-binary, and they still have a lot of Native American roots, and so I kind of and actually Frida Kahlo. That's where Frida Kahlo got all her like her out like that's the kind of the original area, and but that's another topic because I kind of feel like Frida's like kind of like one of the first hipsters.
It's sort of the same topic.
Right? Yeah.
When you talk about non-binary visions in American art, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
Frida's her own legacy, we'll say.
So actually, I actually did do kind of a drag project when I was there, and I guess that was kind of a calibration, but it also kind of opened my eyes because there's also a lot of romanticism that happens in Latin communities where they want to like there's a there's kind of a romanticism with indigenous things, and but at the same time when I actually went and interacted with them, I suddenly realized, oh wait, we just have the same nationality. Like we're still a whole different. There's still a whole bunch of other groups, and I mean they spoke a different language, and that's when I kind of realized that I had an American. That's the first time I realized I had an American privilege because I can get out of there. I was able to buy all these things, and then when I got there, I kind of realized, oh wait, like I'm kind of I'm kind of just like inserting myself here, like some of those first time what are they called? I'm having a brain fart. So like anthropologist.
Mm.
Like that's when I realized, oh shoot, I'm just inserting myself into this. Like, yes, we're from the same country, but they're a totally different group of people, and and that actually made me realize a lot of things. And that's also when I realized, like, oh wait, like I am totally an outsider all the time because even though this is the country that I'm from, like I still don't belong here.
Yeah,
And
and that even though you're sharing nationality, there's not there's not like a magical connection that you may
Right.
have. Yeah.
Well, and also actually, I forgot who wrote the book, um, but there's who wrote Searching for Queertopias, where queer people are always looking for like that utopia that they think that exists, but it doesn't,
Mm.
because it's all kind of a it's all kind of a fantasy. That's why we like drag. That's why we're always trying to create this like possible fantasy where we can all live together in harmony, but it doesn't really exist.
We just have this world. So we're at half an hour. So give us your last thoughts on what you hope for the future, either in your personal practice or as a country or as artists. How do you think we need to grow during this time of crisis?
Well, I think so. I'm kind of hoping that these pieces. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show them in the gallery that I'm supposed to show them. But also, I like to eventually. I would actually eventually want to show these. You know, I want this to be like a traveling show, hopefully. So I think it would be important to show these works. And then and I also kind of hope that we realize how like what a mess or healthcare and what a mess a lot of the not just museum nonprofits but also like people that work direct services with homelessness or with transitional living, and how there's still a lot of work that needs to be done there, because obviously some of those places are the ones that got hit hard. um, and so I kind of hope that there's some kind of like another that somebody else takes a look at things and realizes, wait, we need to fix all these things. And the thing that sucks too is that like it all happened after all the nominations for the Democrats. You know, we're
Yeah,
already in.
we're stuck in the middle of the political process, and
Like
it just yeah.
now people suddenly want all these socialist things, or socialist things
Yep.
that now suddenly people are like, oh shit, maybe I should have voted this way, or maybe this could have happened. So I hope people realize that there's certain, I think I'm hoping that our mentality kind of shifts to a okay, maybe I shouldn't be. I'm hoping people are going to be like, okay, maybe this didn't affect me, but the other people's it did affect, and maybe I need to vote this way, or I need to do this, and I need to stop thinking about myself and more about like other people, because I think that that's kind of something that's just a very American thing where it's like, you know, fuck everyone else. I'm getting, there's always put your, what is it about your bootstraps? Like
Oh, pull
there's always
yourself up by your bootstraps.
yes.
Yep.
And
Less bootstraps in future.
yeah, I'm hoping there's also more community, because I think that's one of the things that lacks in the U.S. Like I feel like the US is less community and more about being exclusive. People love to be in exclusive things in the US, and that's something that's kind of an issue in the US, because if you look at Europe, or other countries, there's like community, and there's like people care, you look at France, the government is afraid of the people. But here it's kind of like a divided, like I'm part of this group and I don't want anybody else to be part of that group. So I'm hoping that hopefully this kind of sets in motion that maybe we need to rethink, you know, pulling by your bootstraps, and that not everybody can do that.
Yep. Okay. That is a great thought to end on, that we're hopefully heading towards more community. We shall see. So thank you so much, Alexander, for being here with us today.
No
Um,
problem.
and tomorrow we will be, yes, links
That's
in
that's
the
my
sidebar.
that's my Instagram.
That's the gram.
If you want to follow me.
So we'll be back tomorrow, 1 p.m. We have Endy, who is a curator at the New Orleans Museum, talking about Nigerian art. So we'll see you then, and be
Okay.
well. Internet,
so
thank you
much.
for coming.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody. Take care.